Hey guys, good evening. It's a nice warm spring night here in Southern California, and I thought I'd do a quick video for you on some of the quick mods you can do for your bike when you first buy it. What are some of the things that everybody does right away? And I think this video applies to almost every bike. I'm going to demonstrate some of these mods to you on my 2017 Z900 that I still don't have plates for. Long story, but actually not a very long story. I just don't put plates on my bikes. I am in California, which gets you in a lot of trouble for that. But luckily, nothing's happened yet. Anyway, what are some of the mods that you do right away on every bike? Okay, you probably know most of these, but I think these are definitely bang for the buck, low-hanging fruit, things that every hobbyist can just do himself very easily. And difficulty level on everything I'm going to mention today is below a 1, except for maybe exhaust. We'll go through and talk about it. So what's the very first thing you do? The very first thing you do, in my opinion, is buy yourself a set of nice frame sliders. I bought these guys on eBay. These are OES frame sliders. And the reason I bought these rather than anything else is this is like a Teflon type material, and you want your frame sliders to slide, okay? You don't want them to get hung up on a surface as the bike's going or flip the bike more, right? So you actually want them to slide. And the reason these are here is so that it saves the frame of the bike in case of a crash. It saves all these components in the frame and stuff like that. So God forbid I ever have to go down. This guy right here will save kind of the handlebar assembly and all that. This will save the motor and the frame. And then, and hopefully my gear that I wear is going to save me. So that's the first mod I do, but be very careful. Mine, in this case, these sliders actually replace the bolt for the engine mount, right? So the way the engine mounts to the frame, this front one anyway, and the one on the other side, let me show it to you. Right here, this guy, you see, the engine's mounted right there into the frame, right? So this is the frame, and that's the motor, right? So this bolt replaces that. If your frame slider is like this, where you have to use one of the engine mount bolts to install it, be very careful when you're doing that, because once you take that bolt out, the motor might drop a 1/4 of a millimeter. Okay, doesn't sound like a big deal, but when you try to redo that bolt in, right? You like that? Okay, you like it? All right. When you try to put that bolt back in, if it's not aligned, you're going to strip the threads inside the motor itself. Don't ask me how I know that shit, okay? But it's going to cost you money to fix it. So what you do, you support the bottom. Okay, you can get a car jack with a piece of wood. Support the bike underneath. Okay, don't let the motor drop. Support it underneath to do that. Difficulty level, a 1. Okay, because you need a car jack probably. Okay, if you do these, a lot of bikes don't really need to use this the engine mount. Okay, a lot of them don't, but this one, these specific sliders that I purchased do. Okay, moving on to the next thing. So that was number 1. I feel like that's the first thing anybody should do. Number 2, and you probably already know this, you want to probably replace this whole assembly that holds your license plate together, the whole fender, right? So what that's called is called the Fender Eliminator Kit. There's 50 manufacturers that make them for every single bike, right? So you just look and find the one you like. I forget what the name of the one is that I bought, but that's really it. It's just this piece of metal, right? It was really nicely done. I'll probably post a link in the description. No one's paying me to plug any of these products, so I don't really give a shit. But, this is This is the one that I installed. These are the OEM lights. They actually plugged right into it. I like the OEM lights on the Kawasaki. I like the shape of them. So that's why I use this one rather than one with like tiny LEDs or whatever. I think visibility is a good thing, and I like function over form. So this serves a really good function of clearing out the back of the bike here. It's also very nice for form because it looks nicer. And so that's the second mod I would do. Third mod, so the difficulty level on this, yeah, I guess maybe it's like a 2 because you gotta take it out. And let me show you. Let me see if I have this thing still. Gosh. Oh yeah, here it is. This monster. Let's see. This is what came off the back of this bike. Look at that. Look how big this was. I mean, come on, Kawasaki. Look at this. It's like a foot long, maybe even more. So that's all gone, and it's nicely cleaned up. Before, after. Before, after. Get that done. It's a no-brainer. And this is not a very costly mod. Most bikes you can get the Fender Eliminator Kit, I don't know, 30, 40 bucks. You get this beautiful clean look. All right, next mod. Probably a $10 mod if you go super high quality. Maybe a $30 mod. This guy right here. Little tank guard, right? Little sticker, usually a sticker, sometimes a different thing. But it prevents you from scratching up your tank. Look into a good one though, because you don't want one where the adhesive is going to stick to the tank after you try to remove it later on, because you might get tired of it and you want to remove it. This is, I don't know. I don't know if this is a good one or not, but I like it. It was easy enough. So what was that? Number 3, difficulty level 0 on that, obviously. If you haven't learned how to peel and stick a sticker by now, you're in trouble. All right, so what else? What is next? So which one do I want to cover next? Now, it depends. Okay, so I'm all about safety first, right? So like mirrors. These are the stock mirrors. I actually like these mirrors. Some people don't like these mirrors. I like these mirrors. People are like, those are way too big. Get some bar end mirrors. Get whatever. Dude, I want to see what's going on around me. And these mirrors really do a good job of that. I like the mirrors on the Kawasaki. On my BMW, I replaced the mirrors within about 3 seconds. Hated those mirrors. So if your mirrors bother you, replace them. So that's number 4, difficulty level. I don't know, a 1. Now, this guy, the windshield, right? Okay, so there's tons of Chinese manufacturers that make these things, and they're all actually pretty good. It's made out of like a, I don't know, a Lexan type of plastic or whatever. I really like them. And the one that came with the bike was like tiny. It was like that big, and I just needed a little bit more coverage to, once you hit like 70, 80 miles an hour, this is more of an upright bike. I know it looks more like a sports bike, but it's not. It's more of an upright bike. And once you hit 70, 80 miles an hour, the wind starts to knock you out a little bit. So this was a really nice addition to the bike. And I had to cut it out a little bit. I used a Dremel tool to cut it out. It was a nice clean cut. I really like how it turned out. And that was there so I can mount my phone. And this is a rock form phone mount. Really like this mount. Although I've upgraded phones since then, so I have to buy a case for the new phone because my new phone is a little bigger and the old case won't fit. Anyway, I won't bother you with all that. So this was number 5. Difficulty level is a 1. Again, you just have to line it up and put all the pieces together. It was actually a little confusing on this bike because the bracket that you have to mount it to, it's just a little confusing. Not too bad. Once you open it up, you'll know what I'm talking about. But I won't get into anything specific to this bike, only because I want to keep this video kind of general. I guess the next thing would be a phone mount. I like rock form. People talk about all kinds of different. Pick whichever one you want. Just here's the things to consider when you're buying one, right? Make sure it's solid, right? You don't want your phone to fly off the bike, obviously. You also don't want the phone to fly off the bike if you lay the bike down so that the phone would break on top of the bike, right? You already broke your bike. You don't want to break your phone either. And you also want good visibility. You don't want it to like obstruct any of your instruments. You don't want safety first, guys, right? So do that. Get yourself a nice mount. Or if you've got a good tank back like I do, you could always slide your phone in here. I still like it here because I actually mount it horizontally like this, and I use it for navigation. That's all I use it for, by the way. I'm not texting or taking calls and shit during my rides. All right, that's like a 0 or a 1 in the scale of difficulty. Next thing, brake levers. You do not need to replace these on your bike. You don't. They don't give you any advantage, hardly whatsoever, except for these are adjustable. And also brake and clutch, right? These are adjustable, and I like them. They were pretty cheap too. I think I bought these off of eBay as well. I don't know how much they cost me. They were probably less than 40 bucks for the pair. Install wise, I don't know, maybe a 2 from a difficulty standpoint. You don't have to do anything crazy. You don't have to like bleed your brakes or anything like that. You just have to kind of slide it into place and then bolt it down. There's a little sleeve that I had to save from the original brakes. That was a little confusing. I still remember that. I might have made a video about it. You can look. So I made that mod. And what I really like is this little green selector here that gives you this nice satisfying click. The green doesn't quite match the green on my bike, but it's close enough. It's green. So that's nice. So that's the next thing I would do. Again, difficulty level is like 1 or a 2. What's the next thing? Okay, so after safety, well, okay, there's one more safety item. All right, most bikes have a garbage horn, right? They just have the shit horns. So I replaced this horn on my bike. I found this on a popular website we all know that sells stuff. And again, I don't want to plug the product. So pick a horn you like for your bike. But let me just kind of sound this out just so you know what it sounds like. It's like a freaking truck. Jesus. It's very loud. It's obnoxiously loud. And that's what I wanted. I wanted an obnoxiously loud bike. Not obnoxiously loud bike, but obnoxiously loud horn, only because if I'm trying to get people's attention, I'm not messing around. I want you to know I'm there. Crazy enough, guys on motorcycles don't hear me very well because they're wearing headphones a lot of times, and they have a helmet on, and it makes it kind of difficult to hear. Anyway, but yeah, again, difficulty level is like a 1, super cheap. That was probably a $20 horn. I don't know if it was or not, but if you guys are interested, I'll post a link to the horn. What's the next thing? The next thing is comfort for me. After safety comes comfort, right? I want to be comfortable, right? Because nothing will keep me from riding a new bike if it's more than discomfort. So if it's not a comfortable bike, I'm not going to be like dying to go ride it every day. It's got to be somewhat comfortable. Now, I'm not saying it's got to be a cruiser or whatever, but your bike has to be comfortable, right? So the seat, okay, I've got 2 seats for this bike. I got the low profile and the high profile seat. And I like them both. I change them depending on the type of ride I'm doing. If I'm going to go into canyons, I'll do the lower profile so I can get more in the bike. If I'm doing a longer ride, I'll do the higher profile so that my legs can stretch out a little bit more and I don't get as tired. That's it. Now, these are not the best seats for this bike. Corbin makes really great seats. Corbin is a manufacturer all of you are probably familiar with, but they are freaking expensive. I mean, a set of seats for most bikes from Corbin can cost several $100s, but for good reason. They're handcrafted, beautiful materials, really nicely done seats. I usually buy Corbin seats for my bikes. All my bikes in the past have probably had a Corbin seat at one point or another. I haven't gotten around to doing one for this bike yet, and I'm not going to bother yet because I actually quite like these seats. Even though the material isn't great, it's just cheap vinyl, right? But it's actually a pretty tidy, nice seat, and it's on there good. And one of the disadvantages of aftermarket seats, even Corbin, right? They don't get those fittings in perfectly, like the things that hook into the bike. They don't always do that perfectly. And, sometimes you might get a little shaking going on. I don't know. What else? Okay, so now the next things are really, okay, so we're still talking about comfort. It is nice to have a nice tank bag. This bike does not have any luggage options at all. So it's nice to have a good tank bag around. And it just kind of gives you a little bit more accessibility. I've got a video on this tank bag somewhere, and it's got like a little rain jacket or a rain cover here, clear case so that you can put your phone in and still see it, or your map. And it's expandable, so it kind of pops up a little bit higher than it is. I got a video on it. You can go check it out. Maybe get a tank pad. I wouldn't really call that a mod to the bike. That's just like a nice thing to have. You can look at luggage racks and things like that for your bike if you've got that option. All right. So what's next? Okay, now it depends. If you think you're going to be working on your bike, okay, at all, other than the mods that I've probably already said, and even some of the ones I've already said probably this would apply to. If you think you're going to do that, I highly recommend one of these guys. This Pitbull stand has been awesome for me. I bought it actually used off of Craigslist. I recommend you look for one used on Craigslist or similar, because there's guys always selling these things, and they're not cheap new. They're probably $120 or something like that. But you can probably get them on Craigslist for like half that price. But in order to get that going, and I really like this one because this side of it is this rubber that I can flip around, and that can go under any bike. Okay, so that's just like that'll go under the swing arm. Or I can install these spools, which you can get online. They're pretty cheap. I think it's like $24 for the two. And I really like having those because they're always in the same place. I can leave the adjustability of this exactly the same because it slides back and forth. I can leave that exactly the same and always pop up my bike. It's like a really quick way to go. It really helps me work on my bike. It keeps it nice and stable. I don't have to worry about it moving or whatever. And it's nice to have the bike upright when you're working on it. Even if you're just changing the oil, it's just nice to have the bike nice and level all the time so you can kind of get all that stuff. Next mod I always recommend is getting like a larger kickstand, because for whatever reason, every manufacturer just has like a dime-sized kickstand surface. And if you're parking on like a hot asphalt or something like that, your bike can like pierce that and then tip over, which would suck. Lastly, okay, so now we've gone through all the stuff that's like super easy and relatively cheap, and you probably have a list of almost 10 items, which you're welcome for me helping you spend your money on your new bike. What's the last thing that I would recommend, which is really, okay, so it's a performance thing, but let's get real, guys. We're into motorcycles for the love and the freedom of the road and the speed and all that, but we also love the way they sound. So for that, I went with this CS Capamente exhaust, which is like super tidy and minimalistic. I ordered it from a company in Brazil. They delivered it. I've got several videos, I think, on that. So you can check those out. But yeah, that's what you could do next. This is full headers, right? And the exhaust. So it's a little bit more on the skill set level. It took me a few hours to get this done. But I wouldn't say it's a very high skill set job. There's no like welding or anything to be done. So I'd probably call it a 4, maybe a 3 or 4. That's about it. I've got a few more mods on this because when you change your exhaust, you're going to need to change your fuel mixture probably. And I've also got that set up. There's videos on that. And I've also changed the air filter. So that's one thing you might want to do with your bike right away. You probably add a few horsepower if you feel like you're underpowered and you don't have the skills to add big performance mods. You could just try a performance filter. Usually those cost you less than $100. They're easy to put in. Not on this bike, they're not easy to put in, but I've got a video again on it, but they weren't super easy to put on this bike. But it at least, could maybe contribute a couple horsepower here and there. It'll make you feel better about having tried that at least. So, that's about it. Those are all the mods that I think are kind of easy out of the box. mods you could do to spruce up your bike and make it yours. As always, kind of be safe. If you don't know, ask. Check YouTube for installation videos. Take your time doing them. Buy some nice tools so that you're doing it right. Don't half-ass the job. You know, don't cut corners. This is your life on two wheels. So if you're getting some crap, cheap mods and you're doing a half-assed job installing them, you know, you're putting your life at risk. I wouldn't do any of that. So I take my time. It's kind of a hobby, more or less, and I really enjoy working on my bike. I usually put on some sort of podcast or something in the background and spend a few hours working on the bike. I actually have my brother coming over in a couple of minutes to work on his bike. I highly recommend modding your bike, but at the same time, be mindful of, doing it correctly. Let's see, I'll do another video on the set of tools that you should probably have. So look for that coming soon. So if you want to see that video, click subscribe. And if you want to see more videos on bikes in general, click subscribe, and you'll be notified. Hit that notification bell so that you'll be notified, when I do post them. Thanks, guys, for watching. I really appreciate it. I'm trying to get the channel going, and want to hear your suggestions. And also, if you've got suggestions, guys, for other mods that you would recommend in your first few weeks of owning a bike and that are low-hanging fruit, don't throw superchargers and shit at me, because I don't think anybody's going to want to make those their first set of mods. But yeah, if you've got other mods that you recommend, go ahead and post them in the comments, and maybe I'll do another part 2 video of the mods that everybody else recommends. Look at this. He's rolling in. Nice. Very good. All right, guys. Have a great rest of your day, and see you on my next video.